Yeah. So it's sort of so anyway. As I was saying, I'm not trying to victim blame here, but truthfully, you get in a free market economy, for better or worse, you get the economy that you support. And the one that most small communities are supporting is a convenience economy, and that means that it comes in the mail. And so you're employing lots of Amazon drivers, UPS drivers, FedEx drivers, and less of the kids that grew up and graduated from your local high schools and need a job. If you look, I'll get on my soapbox for a minute. If you look at Charlestown, our kids don't come here and go to work here. They don't start businesses here, and there are a variety of reasons. There's cost of housing, there's cost of raw land, there's regulatory things that make it harder or slower to start businesses. Small communities, double-edged sword, but by and large, the employment. The simple fact is there aren't great employment opportunities here in the city or even in the county, if you will. We're paying on average $10,000 a year less for a starting teacher salary to the counties that border us, adjoin us, both in Loudoun and in Clark counties. Things like that are all derivative of people not supporting the local economy, of lack of creativity in starting companies, maintaining companies. It's not all because people are on Amazon, but it's certainly a significant shopping online makes it hard for your kids to have a job in the town you had a job in. The end. Should you not shop on Amazon? No, but maybe 1 in 6 times, 1 in 5 times, at least make an attempt to go downtown and see if we have it before. See if one of your neighbors who still works here in the community could sell that thing to you. You'd get out to see a friendly face. You'd get a chance to walk downtown. You'd get to see your tax dollars at work. There are ancillary benefits aside from the cheapest product. That said, I know that the economy right now sucks. It sucks. It might not suck for your 401k, but in real life it sucks. The everyday impact of the American economy right now is gas is out of reach, savings are out of reach, food's out of reach. And that's for people who are employed. If you're underemployed or unemployed, the outlook is even more dire. Utilities are up. Not to get all depressing here, but all of these components are in the room when you think about supporting local. It isn't, not everybody can just get up and pay more for something to support their local economy. So I'm certainly not suggesting that.
I guess one of the things that I find, well, so I should ask, do you consider yourself a millennial? Are you right on the line?
I'm right on the line. Uh, and I think I escaped by a technicality. I never liked the snowflake moniker. I grew up relatively strictly, and so there wasn't a lot of room for snowflaking. Some people might say that as I've aged, I've gotten more snowflakey, but I dislike the label. But I'm like days from qualifying, so it's close. It's like when your horoscope is right on the line. That's where I'm at.
Okay. So I just ask because I find with a lot of my peers, and these are people who are people I went to high school with or people I went to college with, and some of the people with whom I went to college are, a couple years younger than I am. And I'm not, well, people will probably know if I'm indirectly referencing them. But there's just this idea that, so, and I should say too that, I worked, was the first person in my family in anyone's memory who actually worked in like a retail setting.
Yeah.
And I worked for Borders Books, went into management, district wide stuff, did corporate training, all kinds of stuff. Actually loved working like 60 hours a week, oddly, because I liked what I was doing, and that was usually around the holidays. Um, so maybe I got a better understanding of a company that basically was put out of business because of Amazon. Also, poor business on their part because there was never a long range plan. It was like, let's just keep doing what we're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble has survived.
Yep. It was the
Um,
it was the blockbuster mistake. Yep.
so I may be more sensitive than some about this, but to me, I would rather go to, uh, I don't know. I don't find myself buying home improvement things, but let's just say that I did. As much as I hate Home Depot
Yeah.
or Tractor Supply, just because those are like foreign things to me. And when you say like I need this, and they ask you technical questions, and I don't know, it's just horrible. Anyway, if I need something like that, I would rather go get it, right?
Yes.
But so many of my peers, when I talk to them, like, oh, I just, I can't do that. I would have to drive all that way. And I'm sort
It's
of like,
true.
but my head explodes when I sort of think, well, like, why does everything have to be around your convenience? Now, I get it if you are a single parent who's working two jobs and who has three children and you've got to go to sports and after school stuff. If you are unmarried and work barely 40 hours a week and you're not involved civically and you can't get your behind in the car and go actually buy something because you're just so overwrought, I find that infuriating. And I just feel like I don't know if it is a concept in the millennial mind or if it's just embracing this idea. And they're like, well, I'm just going to give up. Anyway, that's my
Do
soapbox.
you feel like that's because you're drifting into the angry old man get off my lawn era, or do you think that there's a more altruistic underpinning to that?
That's an
Or
impertinent question. Um, you know, I don't. I actually think that I've gotten less angry and uptight.
awesome, that's awesome.
Um, like there's. I don't know if I should tell this story. Um, well, I'm going to tell this story because you already said that like you don't like the moniker of snowflake. So
Perfect.
this slightly involves you, but it's not offensive
Okay.
about you at all.
Well, even if it is, I promise to not be offended.
Well, it might be slightly embarrassing. I don't know. If I were the subject of it, and I never would be, but it would slightly embarrass me. But it's fine. Anyway, so sometimes I am, as I'm doing it now, I think of like what is the appropriate way to appear in public. And for me, it's like because I always wear long sleeves.
Yeah.
I mean, like it has to be 100 degrees outside
Okay.
for me to wear
Sure.
short sleeves, and I don't wear shorts.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I
I
mean, maybe I
do
have like,
from time to time.
huh?
I do from time to time.
Well, but I also think that I have like some sort of undiagnosed body dysmorphia, which, what are you going to do? But even if I didn't, like this has been me most of my adult life.
Fair.
Well, I remember when you were running for council and I had never met you
Okay.
until you, at least I don't recall meeting you because I'm pretty sure I would remember because I'm not yet old enough where I forget meeting people. But I had not met you until you became a candidate. And by no means is this meant to be offensive, but it's how my political mind works. I thought you were smoking a cigarette, and all of a sudden I'm like, I look over and you've got something in your mouth and you're smoking. Um, so
It was probably
I
one of these. I don't know. I do this all the time.
no, that's what I meant just now.
Oh
I
yeah.
stopped my story to reflect
Okay.
on that. Sorry. But I was thinking like, okay, he's got to who's he running against? This is what he's got to do. I don't really know him. These are some of the people he needs to talk with, most of whom you already knew. But when I first met you, you were wearing a short sleeve shirt, and I noticed that you had
Oh
tattoos.
yes.
And immediately I'm thinking about the like 85-year-olds on Mildred Street or Church Street who are going to be like, oh, the city council candidate has tattoos. Like, oh, what does this do? And I commented to someone whose name I won't say, but who's a very lovely person, like, you think Nate? Anyone said to Nate like when he knocks on some doors he might want to wear long sleeves or just like wear something? And they're like, and this is what might embarrass you, and it's not meant to be embarrassing. They're like, absolutely not. He's going to get more votes the shorter his sleeves are.
Oh dear.
And I'm like, okay, I'm very uncomfortable with that, and you're going in the opposite direction of where I was going. Because there have been multiple candidates where I've had to say, like, when you go to this particular person's house who's like 92 years old, who still wears her white gloves when she goes to the grocery
For
store,
sure. For sure.
you might want to, like, me, I would take out, like, my earrings, and if I don't have tattoos, but if I did, I would. Anyway, so how did we get on this?
I I don't know, but it's a great line. So let's just keep going. I'm sure
Okay.
there's a punchline to it. Um,
Um,
there may
that
not
was,
be.
well, about perception and about going into town, and I mean, so like,
Snowflakes. We talked about snowflake. I don't know. We are.
oh, millennial.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
that's it. Yeah. See, I'm a terrible podcast host because I don't know where I'm going at all times. So that to me is kind of like, are millennials at the point where we just can't be bothered anymore? And we're just going to let everything burn down because we're lazy?
It's possible, and it may not be laziness. It might just be sick and tired of the status quo, or sick and tired of a rules-based top-down structure that I think wherever you fall on the political spectrum, you can it probably resonates with you when somebody says that it isn't working out great for you. It's working out great for maybe a couple people you know, and certainly people you see on TV, but it may not necessarily be working out great for you. And I think at some point, if you keep playing by the rules and getting that job and getting that starter house and getting the mortgage that goes with it and buying the first car and the payment that goes with it and putting it down on 84 months and the interest rates creeping on you, and at some point you sort of get sick of playing the game and never winning. And it used to be, or at least the story goes, it used to be that the American dream worked for more Americans. It works for less Americans now, or the dream, what you can realize is certainly compressed. And I think in some weird way, millennials and then the generations that have followed them are learning this faster. And I don't know if technology is accelerating that for them, but they're sort of getting wise to the con. Now, that doesn't mean they're not using these products that big business is providing, like AI, for example, where it's widely adopted and overconsumed. And it's probably a massive job killer. Time will tell. But yeah, I think maybe millennials are just sort of like, let's let it burn because it's not doing much for me. And I think that there's my generation and your generation and the generations older than us, we have a duty of care with the time we have left, to try to make this make more sense for the millennials who are just after us, and then these younger generations, these kids that are graduating. I mean, it's graduation season right now. I'm looking around, there are seniors everywhere, like standing on the brink of everything, or what they've been programmed is, this next huge chapter, this leap on their own, and the leap that used to exist just isn't there anymore. They're going to go into the basement because it's all they can afford. So it's hard to blame that person for staying on their cell phone and ordering things on the internet and not supporting local. It's hard. It's tough. There's a ton of work to do there. Now, back to the tattoos real quickly. No, not the tattoos particularly, but it's definitely a counterculture thing for me. And I don't mean that in some sort of cool rebel, the iconoclast crap. I just, there is, hand in the air, there is certainly privilege involved. But you remember before they were all evil oligarchs, like Zuckerberg would always wear the hoodie. This is before Zuckerberg was in the UFC. This was a long time ago. Like, dude went to work in Silicon Valley with no money, wore a hoodie, and he wore the same neurodivergent hoodie every day, and it was kind of his thing. It's like gray on gray on gray. And I grew up in that generation where if you went to work in an office, you wore pleated trousers and what we call dress shoes, and a collared shirt and a tie and a belt, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And gradually that just sort of, this is maybe the tame version of me, and the ink just came along somewhere. But I have like an allergy to being too formal, if you will. So I don't know if that's the millennial or just I don't know. But guilty as charged, for sure.
I didn't offend you with that story.
No, certainly not. Not in the least.
And that's funny because I had a professor at Shepherd who has since moved to Vermont to another university. But he started out sort of, he went to business school. I don't remember which, but, got the business degree, went to the corporate world, I think was in banking or investments or something, and decided that he was going to get an MBA. And he went to his first MBA class because he had gotten off from work, gone home, changed into T-shirt and shorts and no shoes.
Yeah.
And was walking to class, got to his first class, and everyone was in a suit or, a dress shirt or something. And he said he took that one class, got an A, and that was the end of his MBA career. Joined the Peace Corps, got his master's, PhD, taught creative writing, still teaches it. Amazing, amazing, amazing professor. One of my favorites I ever had. Alan Tinkler. He was amazing, taught creative writing. But to me, that's a very interesting story. And I remember when I worked for Senator Rockefeller, and it's weird. It was because I was so young. And I mean, everyone else there was the same age. It wasn't as though I was around, people who were older. But, everyone dressed in like the dark blue suits.
Yep.
With the ties. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just did it. And I'm perpetually tired all the time now, so I don't really have the acumen for it. But I used to dress up quite frequently and it was fine, closet full of dress clothes, most of which I haven't touched in I don't know how long. But I was back on Capitol Hill last year, and immediately I like had these flashbacks. Like, well, I should, because I was kind of dressed
Yeah.
like, and now I
Yeah.
should be wearing, like, where's my suit? Like, I should be rushing around this hallway, taking this stack of papers from one place to another place. And I was there such a short amount of time, but I was finding that I was idealizing with people who were now like 10, 12, 15
Yeah.
years younger
Yeah.
than me,
Yeah.
but thinking in that mentality that that's what I should be doing.
Yeah, it's cultivated on purpose to perpetuate the myth or the ethos that the clothes make the man, and maybe they do, and maybe that's the problem. But for myself personally, like it just bugged the heck out of me, and I came from a very strict church background too, to touch on what we talked about earlier. So it was just entirely too much formal wear in my life, and once I became an adult, I was like, I was really fortunate to get exposed to some people that were trying to start companies and grow companies differently, working in farmers markets and small scale farming, and just kind of doing it a different way than what I thought was the path to success, like we kind of talked about at the top. And somewhere in there is where that seed got planted, that maybe there was a way to do this where I wasn't so buttoned up, pun intended, and yeah.
And I mean, you talk about coming from a very conservative background, and like I said, it came from a very, I mean, what I would call liberal, not progressive, because my parents were very old when they had me. I was like almost to the point where the doctor probably would have told my mom, you shouldn't have this child, sort of thing. Um, but I don't know where this came from and my mom said that when she and my dad were dating and first married, that he was like always impeccably attired, and then something happened. She
Yeah.
credited maybe it with my birth that he just turned into a slob. But she, I mean, I remember one time he was wearing a T-shirt like at the house. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to I don't know somewhere in Charlestown." And will never forget this, and because she was a teacher, the tone of her voice, she's at Stafford. That was his first name. You will not
Leave
go
the
to
house
town,
looking like that.
yeah, until you go upstairs and change. And of course, he went upstairs and changed. But to her, the thought of going to town, town, without wearing a collared shirt was blasphemy. And I swear to you, I don't think she ever owned a pair of jeans
Yeah.
in her life. And not to say that she didn't dress casually, but it was sort of this weird thing where I guess because it was always a very small community and both of my parents grew up here, if you went to the grocery store and someone saw you with mud on your pants, of course, it would be all around the post office the next morning and then at the hair salon. So, I don't know. Uh, it's kind of weird. I mean, like I said, I'm just perpetually tired and I feel like I dress like I'm tired and I, just crawl places. One more question,
Okay.
and this is totally different, and I don't want to like be up in your business too much, but you do live in a home that is on historically significant property
Yeah.
and has post that event has historic significance as well. So, do you feel like a particular type of stewardship or concern, or like what is it like owning a house where it is, I'm sure, possible that you've looked out your front door and seen people in your yard who you don't know who are just pointing and they're like, oh, look at that?
Yeah. First, it's different. Like I don't have any frame of reference. Like I never lived anywhere that people had any special interest in visiting or looking at or enjoying, and did not realize when we had an opportunity to buy the home that just how significant it was. And I'm not trying to like overstate it. This is a part of the country that has all sorts of incredible structures and properties with historical significance. I mean, we're within driving distance of all sorts of birthplace of the nation type type properties. But on its own, fell in love with the home, looked at it on a lark, thought that we would never buy it. Just thought, hey, you never get to see these homes. This one is for sale. Was guilty of conflating historical timelines in my mind and thinking that the house was built when John Brown and his raiders were hanged on the property, that the house was already standing, which it was not. And for those people that maybe are not familiar, we currently own and live in, make our primary residence in what's known now as the Gibson Todd House, sometimes known as the John Brown House. As built in the early 1890s by Colonel John Gibson, formerly of the Confederate Army, formerly of the Virginia Militia, who was present at John Brown's raid and rebellion in Harper's Ferry that ended in Harper's Ferry. He was arrested, as were the surviving raiders. They were incarcerated here in Charlestown, and then they were later executed in a field near where our home stands today. The home was not built. It was just a large agricultural field, 10-acre plot. But the house was later, after the war. Of course, that predates the Civil War. Then the war happens. John Gibson surrenders at Appomattox, comes back home. You know this better than I do, Leigh, as a historian, and makes something, is welcomed back into newly minted West Virginia, formerly Virginia. And I am telling this history as a West Coaster, so forgive me if I'm not being properly respectful, all you locals. And sort of as a giant flex on the town and his version of how history should have gone, he builds this monument to the end of John Brown's reign of terror. But what it's become in the intervening years, as it's lived through a number of private and public owners, is more of a pilgrimage point for people that have, of all walks of life. It runs the gamut, both politically and spiritually. It's got special significance for multiple different groups, and people make trips to stand on the property or near the property. Sometimes it's very casual, in sort of a Civil War, it's checked a box, and other times we interact with people. To answer your question, it feels like first a home, like we love living here. It's not, for anybody wondering, it's not scary, it's not spooky. The ghosts don't run up and down the halls with nooses or anything terrifying. It's a great homey place to raise a family. And like most old houses, it has old plumbing and old electrical and old plaster and all the wonderful things that come with a resident bat population that come with a big old home like this. But it always feels like we're just taking care of it. And I don't say that it doesn't feel like home, because it does. But it doesn't just belong to us, right? And I think that's in its past, and hopefully will be in its future. I fully expect it to outlive us, and it will be someone else's job to make it available to the public so that people can come and ponder what happened here and have your own experience of what that was like, what it means to you, how it relates to today, to the struggles that we experience as a nation, that our different populations, both majority and minority, experience on a daily basis. It's really cool. It's heavy sometimes, but super awesome. Super, super lucky. Always happy to chat with the information we do have. We learn things from people who come and visit. We've had historians and authors, and then certainly tons of lay people. We love hosting things here, so if you want to get your senior pictures in the yard, or you want to do something cool, we're almost always home. So would love to have more eyes on the property. It's very cool.
Your house, I think the second year I started, so I should say, the Shenandoah Potomac Garden Council has a house and garden tour every year.
Yes.
Been going for like 60 years. My mom, her mom, all involved in a huge amount. And of course, as a petulant kid, I was like, oh, that's boring. So what? I don't want anything to do with it. And this is one of the things that I regret in life, that there's so many things that after, my mom died at 66, so she was not particularly old. And like I said, she was a little bit older when she had me. So um, I didn't have as much time with either of my parents as a lot of my peers, who many of whom both parents are still alive, and in some cases they're grandparents. But there were so many things I started doing after she died, mainly
Yeah.
because I had grown up around it, and then I get a phone call like, "Oh, would you like to volunteer to do such and such?" By people who had known me um, most of my life, and then also sort of as a tribute to some of the things she did, I felt like I need to do this
Sure.
because, as you know from many ventures, civic involvement is like cratering. It's so hard to get people involved in many things, and rightfully so because people are busy and the economy, so forth. Anyway, long-winded, but I started right after she died. I started volunteering with the House and Garden Tour, and your house was on the tour the first year
How
that I
cool.
volunteered when Antonio and David,
Yeah.
previous owners, had it, and it started a long tradition that was just recently broken of me always being put in the kitchen.
That's
I'm
all.
like, is this because I look like maybe I eat too much, or because this is like the worst place to be and you just like stick the kid in there? I was finally promoted this year. At Rose Hill, I was given front lawn and door duty, which is apparently like
Wow.
the primo spot because you are the first person. I mean, imagine this, the first person
Yeah.
people see.
Setting the
So,
tone. That's a big promotion.
yeah, we'll see
Congratulations.
if
How many years is that now?
I like eight because of the pandemic, like
Yeah,
eight.
okay. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, you too can start next year, Nate, and work your way up the ladder.
Yes,
Um,
following your footsteps. Okay. Okay.
although I have not, you're not on my list to call for that. So I'm going to make a note when we get off here that
Oh, no. Okay.
next year, because I mean, people who will tell you that they just like get a text from me, and then all of a sudden, the wonderful Ginny Rousey calls them
I
and
was
said, "Oh,
just gonna name drop Ginny,
yeah,
and I've somehow been spared her wrath by some miracle by not being more participatory in that. It's a super cool thing, and a great plug on your part. Good job. Something that happens annually here. It's a really cool opportunity to eavesdrop on or sort of voyeur your neighbors' houses or some cool old property in the area that you won't otherwise get invited inside, most likely, and you should take the opportunity. These are beautiful properties. Some are in better interior shape than ours. Ours is in great structural shape now, but we are raising a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we do let them live in this. So if you're expecting a museum, you will instead see children's toys. But the woodwork and the architecture and the history, those are all still intact. So definitely do the home and garden tour. It's awesome.
And the other sort of less known thing is the vast majority of the money they raise, they reinvest back into community
Yes.
projects. So
Yes.
this year, one of the projects was the Charleston Library. I'm getting sort of a facelift in the front. So we have run a bit long, so I want to kind of honor your time and do our last two pieces here.
Perfect.
Um, the first is the spilled tea segment. So I'm going to tell a brief story and then invite you to tell one of your best stories. And this could be poignant, it could be funny, it could be depressing, it could be
Perfect.
magical, um, whatever you like. So this story sort of goes along with the fact that you live in an older home. I grew up in an old house with really no significance, which is now gone. So, but I do miss like the creaky floorboards and the radiators that bang in the middle of the night, and the fact that it's never quite warm enough because it was a stone house. Uh, I still, to this day, have a great group of friends from high school who I keep in touch with and probably will until we all die. And I'm told I'll be the first to go by about 20 years. So there were three of us, and I'm going to use their monikers of TT and Babs and myself. We decided at Babs's suggestion that we would go to this haunted house, which is in Leitersburg, over near Hagerstown, near the Pennsylvania line. And I think it was an old school or maybe an old firehouse, and it had been turned into a haunted house where you go through and there, like people jump out and all that stuff. Not really something that I gravitate towards. That was at the point in my life where I was like, I'm going to be a button-up business person,
Right.
and be so important. And you did that on a much larger scale than I, but and I don't know how you spent your off time. But for me, it was, and I'll dust off the Simpsons quotation that, what is it? Family, children, and friends. These are the three evils that you must kill in order to be successful in business.
Indeed, indeed.
So I was probably like still wearing clothing from work, maybe without the jacket. I don't know. And we got in the line. It was dark, and for some reason, God love her, uh, TT decided she needed to bring her purse. And this was kind of the area of like big purses era, rather. And maybe they're back. I don't know. I've thankfully never carried a purse, so I can't uh,
I don't
adjudicate.
know either, but it's possible.
Yeah. So she decided to take this thing in with her, which already was a little head scratching. Like, why are you doing that? And the first thing, you pay your admission, go in, and there were like these bleachers set up in this room with like a stage in the front. And then there's blaring music and the lights flashing, all of this, and these people, dressed up as ghouls or zombies or whatever come out. So it is their habit to take someone from the audience, like down into a pit.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, because TT's a very happy person, she's always smiling, she looks friendly. They decided they were going to take her. She was sitting between Babs and I. And when they went to grab her, I mean, she fought for dear life. And if you ever need someone to kick down a door, yours or someone else's, you call her. Because, I mean, she sees a task and she does it. So they had grabbed her, and I mean, she is just preparing to quote unquote haul off at them, and like yelling, "You're not going to take me! Let go of me!" At the same time, holding onto her purse. So I guess they just give up, and I'm like, "Just go, let them take you," pushing her out of the way. And I was very chivalrous, and so they give up on her, and they finish whatever they're going to do. And you go like upstairs, and there are all these different rooms with like weird holographic paint stuff, kind of hokey, and then like someone who jumps out with a chainsaw at
Yeah.
you, and then someone else who's kind of just like a big person who like looms over you. Well, at some point we got to the second floor, and to go down to the next, you have to go down a slide. And they tell everyone like go and leave 15 seconds, go. Well, when you get to the bottom of the slide, there's someone on an ATV, and they turn on the lights and rev it to make it you think it's coming at you, but of course it doesn't.
Right, right. Okay.
So she goes first, and then I like count in my head or whatever. Or the person's like, "Okay, you go." Well, for some reason she hadn't moved, and when I went down with my full force on the slide, she was still at the bottom, and both of my feet just slammed her in the back, and she flew forward towards the ATV. And I know because I was still wearing dress shoes, but they were like, I don't know what you would call them, but the ones that make you like an inch taller.
Yeah, yeah. It's got
So
like
that
that hard wooden sole on
yeah.
them. Yeah, or leather. Yeah, stacked leather. Oh,
So she went flying forward, and of course I'm
oh
like, "Oh
God.
my God, what's wrong with you? Like, are you okay?" And then Babs came down later, and at like several points throughout the evening, like, "Why are you dressed like that? Like, we're going to a haunted house." And of course, my response is,
Yeah.
"Why do you have a purse? When you're going into the haunted house, or whatever I said about." I don't know. She drove a truck. I'm like, "Why are you driving a truck? You're not a farmer." Whatever. So we get the last part of it is this totally dark room where they've put up boards where you have to like turn sideways to get through and feel your way through. Well, somehow we got separated, and TT got caught up with another group. And I think at some point Babs was like, "Where are you?" Like using her real name, which I won't use. Like, "Where are you?" And she was like all the way on the other side of the room. She's like, "I'm with you." And we could hear this voice on the other side of the room. And I guess whoever she had linked up with thought that she was one of their people.
Sure.
So eventually we got back together. We went back to the car, and in my usual just obnoxious self, I'm like, "Well, there's $8 in an hour of my life I'm never going to get back." But I'm consistently reminded of the fact that TT can sometimes be a hitter. Like, and not, I mean, now because we're old, but like at school, she would be one of the first people to like give you a knock in the back when you needed a knock in the back, or even when you didn't. So I just like to claim the mantle that I was the one who managed to send her flying, across the room, which sounds horribly abusive, but all in good fun. We're still friends to this day. One Christmas, as a gag, I gave her a plunger, and she then proceeded to raise it over her head and attempt to beat me with it. So, we've just got a very brother-sister
Yeah,
relationship there.
absolutely. That's
So that
great.
is my story.
Okay. Has great recall. I'm very impressed.
Well,
Down
I
to
mean,
it.
this is literally my life. This is what, because that's what I love. I want to be on the 1950s What's My Line as a mystery guest. And when they tell who you are, I want to write my name, and below that, I just want it to say, like, either raconteur or host, where I just get to make my living telling stories from the fascinating people I meet. So, anyway, that's enough of me. Nate, your story,
That is
please.
awesome. Yeah, I kicked this around quite a bit, and lots of different stories. But I'm gonna share one from rather recently. So just had the opportunity. We obviously live here now, but I am a transplant from the West Coast. So typically we get out that way once or twice a year. With young kids, it's a long haul. It's a long time on an airplane. So anyway, you can find train, whatever. Certainly, car would be a long ways. We tend to do the big holidays, but our son was out of school with some health stuff and on a very extended doctor's note, dealing with some challenges, and so we sort of hit on this idea of my wife and I. When I say we, my wife and I, of heading that way, take our RV and head that way, and kind of just get away from the everyday for a little bit. And it fortunately coincided. My father and my grandfather share a birthday, so my paternal grandfather and my father, May 1st, babies, both of them. And then my daughter's birthday is May 5th. So, like most people, we needed a reason to travel all the way to the West Coast, and so we came up with this idea. My dad called me and said, "Hey, he's in his 70s. I'm finally retiring," and so we kind of had this goal in mind. It's the beginning of April, and we had this goal in mind that we would take our two kids, our 9-year-old and our almost 3-year-old, and work our way towards the West Coast. And first of all, it turned out to be a really awesome trip, much better than I thought. My wife and I are sort of bailout option was, if we get to, say, Virginia, and it's so bad, we'll turn around and come back. But if we get to like Texas and it's so bad, we will park the RV and we will fly home, and then we will find a different time to go get the RV without the kids. So that was sort of how we convinced ourselves to load everybody into one vehicle that is stuck on the road system, the American road system, and head towards the West Coast. We took about 14 days with our kids to do this, and for any of you parents who are planning this, today's children need internet, so there are wonderful options available. There are also still parts of America where the internet doesn't work, whether it's Starlink or some of the other amazing mobile opportunities, and our children let us know each and every one of those times when the internet was anything less than 5 bars or 5 bars and 5G, 4 bars, really 4 bars. I digress. But made our way through sort of we took the southern route and went through Texas and New Mexico and Utah, and saw all of the major national parks along the way, which was spectacular, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. In some cases, I hadn't seen them at all. Highly recommend. Really cool way to sort of remember your place in the larger sort of experience of this planet, if you will. But finally arrived on the West Coast in Washington State in the 10 square mile radius that I grew up in, and got to reconnect with some family, which was wonderful. But I had a chance to, so we got there the 22nd of April, and well ahead of the May 1st birthday celebration, which was kind of the goal. My dad's retirement was going to be on the 3rd, and birthday celebration on the 1st. And so got there, got the RV parked, and my grandfather is 90, and so had not seen him in about a year, which is pushing it at that point. So, but I was very close with my grandfather, and he was instrumental in, like grandfathers are, in a number of things. He was a wonderful and terrible example in my life, but learned a lot, had a great relationship with him, and was lucky enough I got to sit down, like not unlike how you and I are talking, in his last 15 years of life or so. He had retired he had retired well before that, but he was traveling less and less, and he was living in a log cabin that my family owns, a very quaint log cabin, like a 20 by 20 with a kitchen and living room and a sleeping quarters upstairs, very simple. But so I walked into the cabin and got a chance to sit down with him. He's mostly deaf at this point in his life, eyesight failing, and he critiqued my motorhoming performance across the country as a longtime motorhomer, and he gave me some pointers and some opinions on how to or not to change the oil in my diesel motorhome, and sat and talked for a couple hours, and then I promised to see him the next morning, and he passed in his sleep that night. Mm-hmm. So it's quite all right. He was 90 years old and had an incredible life surrounded by his family and his grandkids. But that's sort of my story. But more than anything, got to see his grandkids. They got to see him, even in their little selves. They got to see this grandpa that will be sort of this mythical, they won't really know for a long time, but very meaningful to me. It was not at all the intent of my trip, but we did go on to celebrate the birthdays and my dad's retirement. It's sort of been for me, a really special trip. Just sort of, like I said, regrounding and remembering your place, and then also getting a chance to visit and to commune in person with my grandfather, who's really close to my heart before his passing. He's passed at home. But yeah, that's my story. It will be a trip that I'll remember for a long time, and not for bad reasons. It was a great trip.
That's a sort of very poignant story.
Yeah.
And everyone who has been on thus far has told, some are poignant and others are, there's a meaning to them. And then I usually come up with some like utter disaster of a story.
Perfect.
That makes me appear so frivolous.
No.
But I do have to say, one thing in my life, and there's no way to change this, that I have, and regret is not the right word, but I never met my mom's dad, who apparently I was very much like and interested in. Although he was like a gentleman farmer, but he was so interested in like poultry, which I could care less. So clearly we lost that bit. My dad's mother died when I was 5, so I remember her, but not well. And my dad's dad died when I was 5 or 6. Same thing, and he had a
curse of old parents, right?
I know
it is.
He was in a coma for quite some time. But my mom's mom, from my earliest memory, lived with us because she had failing health. But I really got to spend time with her, and then both of my parents died. Sort of under like caregiving circumstances. Mm-hmm. My mom had cancer and my dad had stroke and ultimately died of cancer, but it was undiagnosed. But what you were saying, I had the opportunity, less so with my mom because I was still working, but definitely with my dad, where I had an opportunity to spend a lot more time with both of them than I probably would have had they not had illnesses which required a degree of caregiving.
Yep.
Which is very sad, but in some ways good. So anyway, it sounds like what happened was almost the best case scenario in your grandfather.
For sure. Like, I think that it's illogical to think that he was going to live forever. And I had come to terms with how far away I lived and the low probability that it was always going to be like I was going to get a call and then I was going to travel across the country to a service, and the universe or whatever was kind enough that I got to be there. And I'll just say one more thing, and then I promise I'll lighten the mood. And just be, yeah, be there at the end. It was different, not as extended as like you spending time with your dad, because it was fast, but really, really special. It's something I'll cherish. Super grateful for. For anyone who obviously doesn't know my grandfather, one of the ways I like to describe him is, as a kid, he was not unlike you. He was always in plaid, and, well, in his case, plaid and denim. Big personality, not super tall, but he was the guy, because this was the era, who would put his grandkids in the truck without seatbelts on, and then smoke in the truck with the windows rolled up, and then roll the windows down to fart. So that was my grandpa, and he kind of maintained that persona through the years. So there you go.
I have fond memories. I have one very quick smoking story, which I have to tell whenever smoking comes up. My mom's best friend was about 25 years older than her, and her grandson was a friend of mine, so there was also that connection. And to me, although she was Caucasian, she reminded me, I don't know why, but my mom had this thing where she would talk about like Golda Meir and Indira Gandhi, like these outsized women who were world leaders. So in like third grade, I probably couldn't tie my shoe, but I could give a vague description of who Indira Gandhi was and what she looked like.
That's awesome.
So this friend of hers, her name was Frances. At some point, I decided that she looked like Indira Gandhi, although she was light complected. Maybe, I don't know.
The innocence of youth, right?
I'm sorry?
The innocence of youth.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
you
told
haven't
her,
been brainwashed yet, right? That's awesome.
well, and she was just like, okay, whatever. But she used to she traveled all over the world. She never worked, but when her husband retired, he would stay home to handle whatever household. And she and some friends of hers would go away every year. So she's bringing back all these fascinating things from different countries. But the one thing that made it hard for me to visit her and my mom to visit her was she smoked. And I had asthma as a kid, so I couldn't really be around people who smoked. But loved her to death. But she had this habit of, and she smoked these long cigarettes. She would pull out a cigarette, and she had these pewter, they weren't ashtrays, they looked like shot glasses.
Okay.
That she would put her ash in. And so she would pull out a cigarette and light it, and then smoke about half of it, and then say, "Oh, my dear, you don't mind if I have a cigarette, do you?" I'm like, at that point, what do you do? Do you say yes after she smoked half of it, or do you just be like, "Oh no, of course not"? But she's someone who, as a kid, I saw a lot of, and then very little of, until I graduated from high school. And then I actually got to go see her a couple of times, and it was just an amazing experience to hear her stories and so forth. Anyway, that's my smoking story. So, last thing.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to issue a call to action. And as you are not currently promoting a book or
No.
you're elected, so you're not running a campaign, what would you like people to go do now that you have this opportunity for the whole 4 listeners that I have? And that's not true, it's more than that.
Yes.
All 4 of these people to go do.
Those 4. Well, shameless plug, not for myself, but West Virginia Fest is coming up. It's easily the highlight of the summer for Charlestown. So please come out and support it and see the sort of broad coming together that it's grown into, with the supporting communities, but Charlestown hosting, and the sponsors, the sort of business leaders in the community that have spent their time, energy, and money. Staff has worked really hard, so it's awesome. I think that is June 13th, if I remember correctly. I'm going to cheat and look at my calendar, but I do believe that's the case. Yes, and it's grown every year. Loved it last year. It was better than the previous. Like, it's gotten better and better and better. So come out and check it out. Come see if you live in Charlestown. Selfishly, come check out whether it's Jefferson County Commission meeting, which is those also occur here in city limits, or city council meeting, or any committee meeting. Those are posted on the Charlestown City website. If you've got nothing better to do on an evening, we were talking about the prototypical, like, childless, 40-hour-a-week person, don't just spend the night at home entertaining yourself, but come see what your tax dollars at work look like and what local government looks like. And I think you'd be shocked at just the level of things that happen every day within a community that maybe you're. I don't want to insult people and say unaware of, but there's a lot of intention that goes into cobbling something like a city together and getting it to kind of go. And I don't mean that on the elected side. I mean that just to, as my dad used to say, keep the lights on and the water running. A tremendous amount goes into that, and I find it fascinating. I know the political machinations are what I think pull you in. For me, it's the process and the procedures and the collaboration that it takes between residents and civil servants and elected officials, and relationship building within the community at large, and then the broader community on a county level, state level, and so on. Especially as West Virginians, I think we, if you will, get got often because we're busy living our lives or raising our families, investing in our families, paying our own bills. Now's a great time. There's a ton of change underway in our community. Much of it is wonderful. Some of it is challenging, and those are great opportunities for anyone to learn a little bit more about what's going on from the local level. If you get all your news from a national news outlet, whatever your political inclinations are, there's a lot, and a lot of it is scary, but there are things that impact you every day where you live that are also happening, and you can get involved. So do that. It's not as boring as you think it will be. And the last thing, and I'll say this specifically to anybody who's here in Charlestown, one of the hot button topics here in the community has been very, very recently and very overwhelmingly has been the impact of a select few, let's call them sovereign citizens, individuals who think that it's appropriate to use the freedoms that we have and frequently take for granted to threaten and intimidate and aggress people right up to the last sliver of the legal limit, and then hide behind the protections that our constitutional amendments may provide, and certainly that the patience and restraint of the community at large provide. And for all of the people that have taken the time to come and share their stories, either in person or by email or written testimony or police complaint about how you've been impacted, threatened, harassed, sworn at, called derogatory terms for how you look, how you walk, how you dress, your gender, your right to walk on our streets. If you've been impacted that way, as unfair as it may feel or sound, my ask to you would be, my call to action to you would be to take one more step, as brave as you were to share this information, and call or go visit one of our local law enforcement offices. Charlestown Police Department is on George Street, and file a formal complaint. The current legal landscape forces us to rely on an overwhelming amount of formal police complaints about behavior that is uncouth, inappropriate, antisocial, dangerous, harassing, violent, and I could go on. And it feels unfair to ask people to go take this extra step, but I would ask, especially our millennials, especially our young people who are a specific target of this particular sort of antisocial behavior that we're experiencing right now, to do a thing that's really uncomfortable and go into a place of power, go into a police station and fill out a piece of paper. Like, everything about this is non-young person friendly. I understand that, but I would ask you to take that extra step so that we as a community can be more aggressive in how we resolve this, and we can ensure that while we respect the constraints of federal and state law, we also protect the people that actually live and work here, the real life people who live and work here, who deserve the opportunity to, the girls, women, children, minority, queer, short, whatever it is that makes you a particular target, that you first, I want you to know that we see you and that we are working hard to limit this. It's not funny, it's not fair, but also ask you to do one more thing to help us solve this. And I'm sorry to end on a dark note, if you will, but that would be my real call to action. It's meaningful and it's real.
At first, I thought you were referencing the action of some county elected officials or department heads, and it took me just a moment because, like I said, it's been a long day. But I'm with you now, and also I, appreciate what you said about sort of my, I guess at the beginning, my interest about going to these public meetings and so forth. But it's really just so I have a place to get out of the sun, and that's a simple quotation. So I'll end with that. So. Nate, I really appreciate your time. We went very long, but...
I apologize.
No, not at all. It's my fault because I like to tell stories, and obviously you have stories too, and I hope that this was not an uncomfortable experience.
Not in the least. I appreciate it.
And really appreciate your time, your service. And just as a last reminder, when is your term up? It's not now, but...
No, I just finished year one. Theoretically, these are 4-year terms, so I'm about as good with doing the math on the fly. So this is 26, so I have 3 years. What is that? 29? But with that new switch to align municipal elections with state and national elections, depending on how that gets sorted, I guess it could be a year earlier or a year later. I have gotten busy and haven't kept up with that particular sort of minutia around excellent state lawmaking. Yet another sparkling example of what happens when you elect the wrong people at the state level and then ask them to make law. So it could be 5 years. I could make it to 30, I think, or it could be 28. It could be early. I forget, but somewhere in there between 3 and 5 years.
You can come back and we'll talk about the political landscape a bit more.
Absolutely.
And just as a reminder for folks who may live in other parts of the state or Jefferson County even, so Ranson and Charlestown stagger their council, whereas Shepherdstown and Bolivar, it's all at once. So each municipality is a little bit different. But again, really want to thank Nate Hartman for spending quite a bit of time away from his family, locked in his tower office, listening to me rattle on about my weird self and my weird friends. And Nate is a Charlestown City Council member and steward of an historic property in Charlestown. And thank him for his time, but also his service in those regards. Next time, I will be speaking with someone who does have facial hair, who actually has a John Brown beard, Josh Oster, who is a public school teacher, a poet, a musician, a fellow Shepherd University person, with myself, who will be talking about not only his music, but what it's like to teach, which is a profession he never thought he would have. And he teaches high school students on top of that. So that will be coming out soon, and the best way to support this and conversations like the one I had with Nate is to like the podcast, follow the podcast, leave a review, only a nice one, and to be sure you share it with your entire battery of friends. If you're a millennial, all 2 of them. If you're from any other generation, a lot more. And Nate, I appreciate your time, and I hope that the next time we see each other in person, you will still feel comfortable talking to me and not think that I'm too weird and bizarre. So I'm going to leave with a wonderful little comment from this Newsbreaks book from the 80s from the library. And had I not checked this out today, we would have had to have removed it. Here's your last question. Or it's not a question, it's a statement, I'm sorry. A mini-sized tape recorder is being sold to people who like small talk. It's
Well
only right.
done. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you, Nate.
so
I
much
really
for
appreciate
having
your
me.
time.
You bet.